Hello everyone, welcome to Diplomatic Briefing. On July 16th, at the opening ceremony of the third China International Supply Chain Expo, NVIDIA founder and CEO Jensen Huang appeared in a traditional Chinese outfit and delivered a speech in Chinese. She said this was her first time giving a speech in Chinese, that she was very nervous and would do her best. Jensen Huang also said in Chinese that she was very happy to come to China, that this was her first time attending the Supply Chain Expo, and that the expo was extremely large in scale and had a lively atmosphere, fully demonstrating China's support for innovation. In her speech, she acknowledged the AI models of Chinese companies such as DeepSeek and DeepSeek, praising the efforts of Chinese AI enterprises. She said that China's rapid innovation is driven by researchers and entrepreneurs, and that the shared use of models like DeepSeek, Tencent, Alibaba, MiniMax, and Baidu has propelled the development and advancement of global artificial intelligence. She also said in her speech that China's open-source AI is a catalyst for global progress, giving countries and industries around the world the opportunity to participate in the AI revolution. To sum up a few observations, first, Wang Renfen is a businesswoman who sells tech products. All her various actions in China this time are undeniably aimed at pleasing the Chinese market. This is simply the nature of business people seeking profit. Wearing a tang suit and speaking Chinese are all part of her marketing package. Don't forget, at the end of the day, she is still an American businesswoman and must comply with the policies of the US government. When politicians want to ban the sale of high-end chips to China, she has no choice but to follow orders. At the same time, we shouldn't underestimate the lobbying power that giants like her company have within the US government. They obviously want to sell more products to China. What's even more crucial is that they hope Chinese companies remain dependent on NVIDIA chips, so that all future computations continue to rely on American products. This way, she gains more leverage to lobby both governments. Third, Wang Renfen's trip to China also revealed some of the concerns held by American elites. For example, during an interview, she mentioned that amid tense US-China relations, a large number of Chinese scholars and researchers who had studied and developed their careers in the US are choosing to leave and return to China, which is a significant loss for the United States. In a group interview on July 15th, when responding to a question, she said that she was also happy for these Chinese scholars to be able to return to their homeland, since after all, that's where their roots are. But when these top talents come to the United States for education and ultimately decide to return to their home country, it is a tremendous loss for the US. In the end, from the perspective of the US government, these American companies are still in a leading position when it comes to chip technology. If they don't even sell chips, what else does the US have left to sell to China? The technological rivalry between China and the US is most intense in the field of high-end chips, which can be considered the fiercest battleground. Even foreign media frequently publish in-depth analytical articles on this issue. On July 16th, Nikkei Asia published a lengthy report on this topic, titled, "Can China Build Its Own ASML?" The article devoted considerable space to explaining the importance of lithography technology for the final performance of chips, and emphasized the extreme complexity of lithography equipment. It is precisely because of this that the Dutch company ASML stands out as the sole leader in this field, creating numerous obstacles for any potential challengers. In fact, there are still gaps in domestic lithography tools, and true self-sufficiency is far from being achieved. This is indeed the objective reality that China is currently facing. However, Nikkei Asia pointed out that by stockpiling as a short-term strategy, China still maintains strong motivation to replace ASML, the leading Dutch company. The New York Times predicted back in 2023 that as China and the US engage in a contest in the chip sector, lithography machines will become a key weapon. The report at the time wrote that as the US tries to hinder China from making advances in technologies that could enhance its military capabilities, the complex lithography machines used to etch intricate circuits onto computer chips have already become a crucial choke point. Now, after multiple interviews with industry executives, Nikkei Asia has found that China's largest chipmaker, SMIC, along with other peers including memory manufacturers Changxi Memory Technologies and Yangtze Memory Technologies, have made significant progress in several areas. These companies have already replaced foreign tools used for processes such as etching, measurement, deposition, and chemical polishing with domestic alternatives. China's 14th five-year plan clearly sets out the goal of fully localizing the chip equipment supply chain, and chip manufacturers across the country are working hard to make this a reality. However, there is still one major obstacle at present: lithography technology. The process of projecting and printing chip designers' layouts onto wafers is crucial to the final performance of the chips. However, lithography machines are complex and expensive. There are only 3 companies in the world, ASML from the Netherlands, and Canon and Nikon from Japan, that are capable of producing advanced lithography machines. Nikkei Asia summarized the situation in the field of lithography technology, saying that China's short-term strategy is still stockpiling. To circumvent further export controls, China purchased equipment worth €8.92 billion from ASML in 2024. This surge in orders made China account for 41% of ASML's system sales that year, ranking first among all markets. Although ASML expects that, due to the impact of export restrictions, this proportion will drop to around 20% this year. However, the report believes that China's motivation to replace this Dutch leader remains strong. A semiconductor analyst at the American investment bank Latham pointed out that, aside from lithography technology, China has made tremendous progress in almost all areas of semiconductor equipment. It is clear that China is working hard to develop its own lithography technology. This will take time, but within China, the large stockpile of ASML equipment has clearly bought them time. An executive from a Japanese chip equipment supplier said that if China achieves a breakthrough, it will put enormous pressure on non-Chinese suppliers. Didier, head of EMEA IT software research at Bank of America Global Research, Semama said that the entry barrier for lithography technology is much higher than for other types of chip manufacturing equipment. However, given that deep ultraviolet (DUV) and extreme ultraviolet (EUV) technologies have existed for many years, he expects that China will eventually achieve a breakthrough. Foxconn board member and former TSMC R&D chief Chang Shanyi described lithography machines as the most complex and resource-intensive step in chip manufacturing. Lithography machines are harder to manufacture than other chip equipment. Nikkei Asia's analysis says that although there are so few players in the market, for ASML, it's a mixed blessing. As a major player in this critical field, ASML is caught in the crossfire of the US-China tech rivalry. Affected by macroeconomic headwinds and geopolitical uncertainties, ASML's stock listed in the US has dropped by more than 20% over the past year. More importantly, even though the road to success may seem long, these political tensions have already turned China, this key market, into one of ASML's most formidable competitors. For example, Shanghai Microelectronics Equipment Group Company, Limited, founded in 2002, has already developed or plans to develop various types of lithography tools. Huawei, which has long been targeted and suppressed by the US, has also established a massive R&D center in Shanghai and has recruited talent from global chip industry leaders such as TSMC, ASML, Applied Materials, and KLA. In addition, some lesser-known startups in Shanghai, such as Rainbow Technology and DeepSeek, have also entered the field of independent research and development of EUV lithography machines. Once breakthroughs are made in lithography machines and other equipment, this will help China gradually increase the production of advanced chips. To support this process, in May 2024, China launched the third phase of the National Semiconductor Industry Investment Fund, with a government investment of 344 billion yuan. According to government information, the third phase focuses on strengthening the lithography machine supply chain and is expected to attract 1.38 trillion yuan in private investment. From Beijing to Shanghai to Shenzhen, local governments have also introduced policies to support domestic suppliers of key EUV components, including photoresist, lithography tools, mirrors, lenses, lasers, and light sources. Nikkei Asia, citing sources familiar with the matter, noted that ironically, US export controls have created a golden era for Chinese semiconductor equipment suppliers. Almost all of China's top chip manufacturers have already started switching to domestic equipment as much as possible. Megan Harris, a semiconductor expert who served as a senior U.S. government official during Trump's first term, said that U.S. policymakers are somewhat naive or ignorant about China's domestic chip equipment manufacturing capabilities. She believes that domestic competitors to companies like Applied Materials, Tokyo Electron, and Lam Research have already emerged in China, and it's very likely that China will further increase its investment in independent semiconductor equipment R&D. She is concerned because this poses a risk of putting American equipment manufacturers in a difficult position. And in the worst-case scenario, Chinese semiconductor equipment manufacturers would not only be competitive in the domestic market, but also in the international market. This is already happening, and once it does, it's very hard to stop. ASML, having been forced to become a tool in the US crackdown on Chinese chips, also has something to say as the world's leading chip manufacturing company. According to a New York Times report on June 5, ASML CEO Christopher, in an exclusive interview with the New York Times, Peter Wennink warned that US chip export restrictions would not only weaken ASML's dominance in the semiconductor industry, but would also backfire and further encourage China to become more self-reliant. To sum it up simply, over the past few years, China has stockpiled a large number of ASML lithography machines through a stop-and-go strategy with the US, buying time for domestic chip development. Whether it's industry insiders or economic analysts, experts both in China and abroad firmly believe that China will eventually achieve a breakthrough. And the continuous restrictions and crackdowns imposed by the US on China will only further spur Chinese semiconductor equipment manufacturers to accelerate localization. In the end, it's just like with the space station. The US tried to exclude China, but instead, China ended up with its own space station, which is newer and more advanced than America's.